Hello, I'm Rick with Stellar Living, and this week we're going to read over Ecclesiastes Chapter 2, verses 16 through 26. So verse 16 reads this way, "For there is no lasting remembrance of the wise man as with the fool, inasmuch as in the coming days all will be forgotten, and how the wise man and the fool alike die." So here the author is elaborating on his realization at the end we all face the same outcome. In James chapter 1 verse 11, the apostle writes, "For the sun rises with a scorching wind and withers the grass, and its flower falls off and the beauty of its appearance is destroyed. So too the rich man in the midst of his pursuits will fade away." Solomon has now come face to face with his fate. This realization makes him hate life as expressed in verse 17. "So I hated life, for the work which had been done under the sun was grievous to me, because everything is futility and striving after the wind." The author is going beyond hating his life, but hating the human experience altogether as he struggles to experience a life of meaning. Verse 18, "Thus I hated all the fruit of my labor which I had labored under the sun, for I must leave it to a man who will come after me." Verse 19, "And who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool, yet he will have control over the fruit of my labor which I have labored by acting wisely under the sun. This too is vanity." After Solomon's death, his son Rehoboam took over his kingdom and squandered 10/12 of his father's kingdom. In the process, he divided the kingdom in two. Israel and Judah were in a state of war throughout his 17-year reign. Verse 20, "Therefore I completely despaired of all the fruits of my labor for which I had labored under the sun." Now our author is hopeless in finding purpose in his work. Verse 21, "When there is a man who has labored with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, then he gives his legacy to one who has not labored with them. This too is vanity and great evil." In our lives, we are always told to stay in school, get a college degree, and find a good job. We are hardly taught anything on living a life of meaning and purpose. Oftentimes, we find ourselves feeling despair or hopelessness for true satisfaction in life, similar to what King Solomon is feeling. At the end of it all, someone else will take over everything we work for. To live strictly for earthly gain is determined to be vanity and great evil. Verse 22, "For what does a man get in all his labor and his striving with which he labors under the sun?" Again, our author asks, where is the value in our work? Verse 23, "Because all his days his task is painful and grievous. Even at night his mind does not rest. This too is vanity." He compares our daily task to something that is painful and causes grief to us. Even worse, our work seems endless. Even at night we don't rest, as we lay in bed thinking about our day and thinking about what the next day's challenges will bring to us. Verse 24, "There is nothing better for man than to eat and drink and tell himself that his labor is good. This also I have seen that it is from the hand of God." Now our author takes a dramatic turn from feelings of hopelessness and despair, what author Philip Ryken describes as an oasis of optimism in a wilderness of despair. He now gives a preview of his final determination for living a life of meaning. Only in God does life have meaning and satisfaction. Without God, our labor, our pleasure, and our possessions are all meaningless. True joy can only be found if and when we acknowledge and revere God. Verse 25, "For who can eat and who can have enjoyment without him?" No matter what we experience, life is more pleasurable with God. Verse 26, "For to a person who is good in his sight, he has given wisdom and knowledge and joy, while to the sinner he has given the task of gathering and collecting, so that he may give to one who is good in God's sight. This too is vanity and striving after the wind." The preacher is now seeing the difference in living a life with God. In this verse, we see both polarities in living under the mercy of God and living a life of sin. For the first time in Ecclesiastes, we see a mention of the word sin. Through Solomon's experiences, we conclude that a life of sin is also vanity and striving after the wind. In looking in his past experiences with wisdom, pleasure, possessions, and labor, we see two paths, one with God and one without him. So that's going to bring an end to Ecclesiastes chapter 2. I want to thank everybody for listening, and we will be back next week with Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Thank you for watching.